Okay, let's welcome back my friend Coach Prevost, who is now the O-line coach, run game guy at Valpo. I'm not going to say the whole name. I'm just going to say Valpo. Valpo University now. Coach, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that school has a big word that I can't pronounce. I always screw it
Yeah.
up.
Valparaiso. My kids have reverted to Valpo as well.
Well, like I said, I was talking to Coach Banster and I said Valpo, and he even said, "What's Valpo?" And I was like, Valparaiso? And he goes, "Oh." And I'm like, I know what Valpo is. And he was like, "Oh."
Yeah, we shortened it up on the t-shirts and everything. It's branded itself as Valpo.
Yeah, I've heard about it years ago, especially when I moved up to the suburbs. Because like I said, you're only about an hour and 20 minutes away from me now. And I was like, yeah, that's just Valpo. And that's all I've ever heard. I've had kids talk to Valpo to go to school there. And I'm like, that's all I know it as. Just Valpo. Um, I forgot to ask you this before we recorded, so tell me to F off. I saw you used to be hippos, now it's rhinos.
Yeah, moving to different spots and the 5 or nearly 6 years spent as the O-line coach at the University of South Dakota, and bringing the hippos in. Those guys, they help build that name. They're the ones that are doing the work, and let them keep that. So I spent some significant time. Obviously, when you're living 9 hours from your family, you spend a lot of windshield time. And I went through a bunch of different animals and came up with Rhino. Worked on our acronym and got that set up, ready to go. And Coach Fox, our head coach, does a great job as far as program building, and tying in a lot of the things that he does within that was really good for it.
So what's your sell for rhinos now? Because I know you had the whole hippo reason why. So what's the selling point for the rhino now?
Yeah, so for the Rhino, it's a bad animal. It's you don't want to run into one of those that's angry, but
Hmm.
they're a very intelligent animal, and it's a family oriented animal. Those are the things that I really, I'm looking for animals that are nasty, territorial or family related, and smart, and so I'm running out of animals, so I think I'm probably gonna have to be here for a while. Is my guess. So
Yeah, I there's a coach here, people probably heard of him, Coach Tony Haller, who did Feed the Cats programs. And he said something about linemen being called big cats. So I thought about doing that because I have smaller old linemen that have to be faster. So that's kind of what I've adopted because they prey on things and everything else. Like you deal with bigger guys than I do, like actual linemen. I deal with guys that probably should be fullbacks converted into linemen. So I have to think of like something. So I'm like, oh, we'll be the big cats. We're fast. We'll prey on people. Blah 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 blah. And that's all I
I
can come
like
up
that.
with.
The everyone uses hogs, and that's just it's so overdone.
Yeah.
And now at least people are coming up with like nifty tags. I'd rather have something original, something guys can take with them, and so something that they can identify themselves with. And that's playing college football is a huge sacrifice, and
Hmm.
playing offensive line at any level is a tremendous sacrifice.
Hmm.
And part of our job as line coaches is to keep numbers up, to keep involvement and find ways to make it fun, because there's a lot of things about it that isn't fun.
Hmm.
And so our individual is most position groups punishments. And so you start looking at things like that, like, oh, hey, lean on a guy this way, now lean on a guy that way. And obviously we're not teaching guys to lean on people,
Right.
but, and, how are you going to find, how are you going to make this worth it to them? Obviously winning games on Saturday, but man, it's a long time from the end of November to the beginning of September. And
Hmm.
so what are you doing those 9 months to keep your group engaged, to keep it fun for them, to keep it fresh for them. Spring ball is a lot for an lineman.
Hmm.
Every school you can talk to, any of them are short on numbers in the spring for offensive linemen, and they're getting a billion reps. Their bodies are getting beat up. So what are you doing to make that enjoyable for them? Because at the end of the day, you got to keep your numbers up, and that's part of the thing I've been very fortunate with at South Dakota, and now here we didn't lose anybody over the spring. Um, is finding ways to keep guys engaged, because especially at our level, you bring in guys, how offensive lineman's body develops in that 19, 20, 21 years of age changes who they are so much, and how they mature, their personality. Once it clicks for a guy, you got to be careful writing offensive lineman off too fast. I think too many people do it at times. I know I did it when I was a young coach.
Hmm.
Uh, so I've transitioned out of that.
Yeah, to make it fun, we'll sometimes do pat and go. If I am like, oh, we're too tense. I don't know if you can do it in college, but I do it sometimes. I'm like, get water real quick and come back. So they come back, I act like I'm mad. And all of a sudden I'm like, all right, let's line up, pat and go. And they love it. It just, if we're tense, I tell them like, hey, I'm an old lineman too. I can only throw like a 10-yard fade. So we're only gonna go 10 and in and pat and go. You gotta go and I gotta get you the ball. And they love it. And they like now they loosen up. And I do it sometimes before inside run. I'm like, okay, they're all loose now. They're all having fun because they watch the guys throw a ball and we're down there hitting bags or hitting the sled or doing whatever. And like you said, then they're like, oh, I wish we could do that sometimes, just throw around a ball. I'm like, screw it. Let's just do
Yeah, we do it. I do it my last indie period of the fall and spring every year. We do pat and go. We call it fat and goes.
it.
So
I don't know if you can say that in today's society, but I love it.
I call my kids fat all the time. It's a term of endearment. So if they're not fat, they're not right.
Hey, I'm gonna stop my diet now then. You've made me feel better now.
I've been starting my diet 4 times a week for 10 years. So
I do good during the week, and then I get to the weekend, and I'm like, it'd be nice just to order Jersey Mike's or a pizza, so I don't have to go anywhere. And that's where I screw it up. Like today, I did fine. I had oatmeal this morning. I feel pretty good, and then Saturday we'll roll around, and I'll be like, Pizza Hut sounds good or something. And let's
yeah, that's tough, man. Then you get little kids and you throw them into the mix and they don't eat well. Everyone, when they're like, I was like this too before you're actually a parent. You're always like, oh, I'm not going to feed my kids fast food or preservatives. Yeah, right. Um, wait till real life hits you. And so,
Well, the summer's the only time I have to try to do something because when the season gets here and it's 7 o'clock at night, you're like, it'd be so easy just to pull in here, grab this, and go home. That's the problem.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
summer for high school coaches, if you're doing 2 or 3 sports, June, I was at that high school for 12 hours a day almost.
yeah. I mean, the high school coaching thing is so hard because it's a full-time job coaching, but that's not your job you're actually getting paid for.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a lot of people don't understand. It's the job that most often that you're being evaluated on your success. So it requires a tremendous amount of time. It involves much more of your process. To be good at it, you have to be passionate about it. To be good at anything, you have to be passionate about it. But I've always had a lot of respect for high school coaches because they have 2 jobs. And, for me, I have one job. I coach, a bunch of fat kids, and we just roam around and lean on people. So it's pretty easy.
Yeah, being a lineman is just pushing people. That's all it is, right? You just push people. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I always say your job as an offensive lineman is to keep your body in front of another person's body, um, and be in between the ball at all times. If you can just do that, but it breaks down a little bit more complicated than that. I found out.
Yeah, you mean you just don't block somebody that the person
Yeah,
who stands is yelling at you, just block somebody?
yeah, just block them. It's the the little league coaches that they drive me nuts. Throw strikes, like you don't think the kid's trying to throw strikes? Like, think he's trying to embarrass himself out here? I don't think so.
Oh, throw strikes. Why didn't I think of that?
This whole time I've been trying to walk everybody.
I'm trying to lose on purpose. You guys are ruining the game plan right now. Just block somebody. Why didn't I think of that? Block the linebacker? Jesus, I wish I would have worked on that all week. Jesus Christ. I that's why I hate the headset that covers both ears, but there's times I wish I had both because I won't hear it anymore. You won't hear it in division, like at college you may not hear it, but in high school you'll hear it and you're like, yeah, I know. Why didn't I just come next time I hear it this year, I might go to the head coach. Hey, can we invite everybody to practice so they can see like what's going on?
Yeah, it's that part's hard. That part, it's hard to, I think, especially for me as a young coach, one of the hardest things I had was when you're coaching offensive line, and I still struggle with it. There is some more ups and downs on it. You're going to have, when you have five guys that need to operate in unison all at once to be perfect, you're going to have some times where you start beating yourself up a little bit. I've coached tight ends before, and even if you have three tight ends on the field, one guy runs around route, who really cares? Like, okay, whatever, just move on. Obviously, not saying that no detail is not important, but it's totally different if offensive lineman goes the wrong way. Someone could get hurt, and it's very noticeable. It's even young quarterbacks who I'll always say it's the most important position in football. They can come in right away and throw 7-on-7. If they don't know their outs, like nobody else knows that besides them. So there's a little bit of a safety net there where they can be confident in their skill set and kind of see things through. But as offense, I think as a young offensive lineman, when you're a freshman coming in, I let my freshman play right away, and it's tough from the competitive side of me. But if you're ever going to develop a room and build depth, you need to. But there's times where you can't practice if those guys aren't. They can, an offensive line can room practice for everybody on the field if they're not doing their job, because it's just they're dead balls every play.
So you said it before we recorded. So the transition, you're now at a different school. They do things a little differently. Like you said, South Dakota, you were spread up tempo. Valpo's a little bit more slow paced. What's the transition been like for you personally, coming from an up tempo to now we got to slow it down a little bit and run an offense that way?
Some things that I never coached that I realized that you have to put some time in is the huddle. You get out to practice and I was like, wow, this looks terrible. And I just thought I've never we huddled in 4 minutes. We really didn't care where people stood.
Right.
Because you don't care in 4 minutes, you're winning the football game, you're gonna go win the football game.
Right.
So teaching the actual huddle, teaching the fundamentals of under center snapping. So I've had 3 years ago, I transitioned to letting a lineman grab the laces on shotgun, and then I had an offense coordinator that wanted to go the dead snap. I didn't love it. And the only reason why I don't love the dead snap is because I don't know how to correct it on a personal note. So if something's going wrong, I feel like the person saying throw strikes, just get the ball back there, that's not helpful.
Right.
I can fix the other kind. So now because we go under center and the gun, we've transitioned to making sure that we're not taking the laces to give it to the quarterback, so we can transition from the gun to under center. Teaching how to break the huddle. Before, our offensive linemen, when the whistle blew, their eyes immediately snapped to the sideline for a signal to put the ball and go. And now, more, hey, we have the opportunity to finish down the field, to be a part of plays, maybe spring a last block or whatever it is. So, it changes. I'll tell you this, you can talk about tempo. An offensive lineman that doesn't tempo runs a hell of a lot more than one that does, because he's running down at the end of every play, and then he drives before, our kids were so ingrained, they just saw the signal, they went to the shot the line of scrimmage. So they're putting a little bit more miles on, but I don't know. There's goods and bads to it. You know, the downfall is you don't get any more time to think. You get to play in a tempo time, and you're standing there. You get 6 seconds, ball snapped. When you
Mhm.
break the huddle, well, everyone's like, "Well, the lineman can think about." It. I'm like, they get the play, they break the huddle, they walk up to the line, and they have the same 6 seconds that they had before, and the ball snapped. Those are, but we still expand the offense immensely because you have to say that because or you have to do that because if you're not playing fast, what are you doing differently to make people prepare for you? So I think there's some challenges that way. I like it. I like playing this way a lot more. I think, we're really good defensively. Allows us to control some games because, at South Dakota, it was awesome. Like when we were better than the other team, man, we scored points faster than fire. Like it
Uh-huh.
was boom, 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 boom. And when we weren't, man, we were the fastest 3-0 team in the country. Like we used like 6 seconds off the clock. And I was like, all right, and you get a couple of drives like that. That's really demeaning for guys. It's hard for guys to get in a rhythm, and it's hard for your defense to recover. And it's hard for them to keep their composure after that many stops. So, I think um, having the multiplicity. Obviously, the tempo game is something I brought to here, where we can
Mhm.
mix that in now, which I think is going to make teams have to prepare for us a little bit differently because I think that's when you're the most dangerous is when you have the ability to do it, create a big play, things like that. You get your guys tuned up to getting down to the ball, running something that they're really confident in. So I think those are things that we are going to have and tools that we add to our tool belt. How to do things. Don't deal with the noise in the PFL like we did in the Missouri Valley. Like you go into North
Mhm.
Dakota State, you go into the Fargo Dome, you're not, you can't hear anything. So you can go to a verbal cadence. Those are, things that are nice. The communication with the offensive line is something that it will help bring younger players. Like I have a couple of linemen who played quite a few snaps here, and then we're going to rely on some freshmen to play for us this year. And I kind of, those guys basically tell them who to block, and
Mhm.
that part's been different for me because when you do play the tempo a little bit, you don't get the time in between the huddle to where they're actually like coaching them on the way. So there's some goods and bads, but I like it. I think it's much harder to prepare for. We get to be far more multiple.
Uh-huh.
Um, we're in the formation shift motion. So I actually had to simplify my run game rules a little bit than I've had in the past, as far as identification things. And it's funny, you think going slower, you not simplify them, but the fact that we formation shift motion,
Uh-huh.
condensed splits, you get so many looks that you need to be extremely specific on what your rules are because there's no way I can possibly prepare them for all the looks that they could
Uh-huh.
get. When previously they were like, hey, we're going to get these like 9 looks. I want these plays blocked this way.
Right.
Uh, so now there's a little bit more, black and white, like, hey, if this guy's on this line, count him. If he's not, don't count him. So learning a little bit more like NFL Mike ID style rules.
Mhm.
So it's been a really good learning experience for me that way.
Yeah, we've been a no huddle, and then we were talking about our situation. We are probably gonna go to a huddle, and I was thinking of that too. Like when you're no huddle, you just have your rules. They're already at the line. They can see what the movement. When you're in a huddle and they break, they're gonna move. You don't know where they're going. So I've had to simplify footwork even because like my kids will think about, well, this play I have to use this footwork or I have to do this. Like I'm putting in duo and inside zone and people can slap me for it. I'm using the same footwork. I really don't care. I'm like, let's just use the same footwork because I don't want you guys to think about that. I just want you to think about who you're blocking. If we're a huddle team and you turn around and all of a sudden they're moving or they're not where they were before because you don't know your back's to it or whatever, you have to simplify. And like you said, I thought I could get more, but you can't because now they have to, like you said, they have to walk to the huddle, talk to each other. They break the huddle, but what if it's different than what they just talked about, and it changes?
Yeah. and you don't have the time to be like, at South Dakota, we got to the point where in 2020 we had some younger linemen during the COVID deal. I just tell them, hey, if you don't know what you're doing, get on your haunches, and we'll take a break, let you get some help, think this through. But the fact of the matter is, when you huddle, you don't have that time for error. Like, you got to go because you're going to run out of clock.
Hmm.
Uh, and also, a duo and inside zone is the same play. Like, it's the difference is the running backs mesh. And if anyone ever tells you differently, I don't really understand it. The difference, there is a difference in the play in the backfield, on what the running back's read is, which
Hmm.
makes you defend it differently. But for the offensive line, it's, to me, the opposite play of zone. You're trying to create horizontal push on the front side or the back side now of duo, where you're trying to create it on the front side of zone, and vertical push on the front side of duo, and vertical push on the back side of zone.
Yeah, that was my last year was my wide zone deep dive. Then I tried to dive in deep dive to duo this summer or off season, not summer, off season. And that's for me, inside zone is we're protecting the gap we're going. So if it's we're going inside zone left, I gotta make sure my left gap's protected because we can create that cutback. Duo, I'm telling them the opposite. If we're going duo left, well, you gotta protect the inside gap. And we're taking the same footwork, you're just going the other way, is all I
Yep.
was doing. And we're still getting the same linebackers. That's your plus linebacker, whatever it is. We're still getting there. That's where the double team's going. But now we got to add a tight end wing in there somewhere to make sure everything is there. And like you said, running backs just reading the linebacker, which I had to learn. Now we got to
Mm.
do all that. Um, then if it gets blown up, I'm in the mode this year of the running back has to make us right. We can't get everybody. So if he gets tackled in the backfield, that's on him. That's my new mindset. And if somebody yells, I told them if they yell at me, I'll yell at the running backs. Be like, nope, that's their fault. Unless somebody just comes flying in free. Someone comes flying in free, there's a problem. But if he gets tackled, I'm like, that's on the running back. So that's all I've been deep diving into was duo. And like I said, I think I made somebody mad saying, yeah, it's like inside zone. They're like, no. And then I started teaching it. And I'm like, well, I'm using the same footwork. It doesn't matter to me. It's just our aiming point's different. That's it.
No, it is. I mean, for us, we're trying to a lot of times hit inside zone and let it fall off the table anyway. So it's,
Uh-huh.
however that collapses down and however you do things is, you know, I think, to me, it's the difference of the running back's path, the running back's eyes,
Uh-huh.
and offensive line. Like, I've done both of them for many years and had success with both. And no one's told me different. So
But you're the smart one here. I'm the dumb guy trying to figure it out.
I wouldn't say that. I got plenty of things I need to figure out at this point.
Well, because
So
we were a big ISO or belly run. And so then we didn't know if we were going to be able to do it this year. So that's why I said, well, let's just get the best of both worlds. Give me duo. And then sometimes we can add a lead blocker in there. Like you can still add a guy in there that's lead blocking somewhere. And they let me do it. And we're doing it right now. Um, the linemen are struggling a little bit because they're still thinking inside zone, just the way I'm talking about it. But that's me. I got to figure out the right words that are going to click with them. And it's mainly the tackles. The inside guys are figuring out it's the tackle for some reason. When he gets a tight end there, he's like, well, I got a double team. And I'm like, well, kind of, but you still got to watch that linebacker. We still got to be able to down
yeah,
this guy with the
that is where the big difference is that play side tackle and duo isn't used to having to worry about the tight end.
yeah.
Even though he has him back there in seal zone,
Uh-huh.
it's funny they never work that way, because when a backer falls out in seal zone, the tackle just turns back on the defensive end and the tight end kicks out to the backer and you crack it that way. In duo, it's not built like that. So it's that part's a little bit different, even though the back's reach should get you there. But that's where I've always had trouble too, is getting truly those two working together in a good combo. Um, and then, the if you teach it like gap scheme right away, you get some of the, like, they're trying to like rip all these combos over because I feel like they're
Mhm.
outflanked.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's where, like, I actually teach mine like a zone right away, so we can create movement on the first level and then let the back make us right.
That's the way I approached it because the first way I learned duo, like everybody else says, it's power without the polar. So when I sat down and looked at it, I'm like, well, with power for me, I just kept saying gap down backer unless we double team the side, the front side, and I'm like, but if I say gap down backer, then my tackle is going to leave the end, and that's what their mindset's going to be just because of those wording to them. So now I got to teach it like a zone. So that's why I have the same footwork. I'm like, we got to protect this gap, and then we're double teaming, we're pushing here to get to this backer, and like you said, if everything flows, the running back should cut it back, depending on
Yep.
where it flows. So I'm doing the same thing of teaching it like a zone. But again, it's my tackles. The inside guys, center guards, they figured it out. They're like, oh, this is just like inside zone. We're deucing here. We're doing whatever. Everything else is, um, it's the tackles when you get the tight end. If the tackle is by himself, though, it's easy. He just kicks out or he seals. But I'm teaching it to like a zone, and I know that's probably not the right way to do it because it is a gap scheme. But I'm like, I have to teach it that way.
Well, see, you're already a step ahead of me on that. I already made that mistake once, so you're ahead of the game on me there.
Well, just hire me then. I'll be your assistant. We'll come on over and we'll figure it out.
There, you got it. You got it. I don't know if anyone wants that evil.
I don't know if my fiance will let me do that either. I'm already gone long. I'm already gone enough. If I coach college, I'd have to make Nick Saban money for her to be like, yeah, it's worth it.
Yeah, isn't that something? It's I tell guys all the time, man, players that want to get into this, if I'm like, you can do anything else and be happy to do it, but if you can't, it's the best thing in the world to make a living. So and if it's the only thing that makes you happy, you have to do it to be there. So and that's until you reach an upper tier. There's a lot of us in this profession that can make a lot of money doing something else. But there's not, I don't know if there's another job in the world that would feed my competitive appetite or my appetite for competition.
Mhm.
I also do have a competitive appetite, both. And the obviously losing is terrible, but the rewards of winning and watching kids get it, watching them succeed, watching them grow up, that part is pretty special. And now having my own kids, letting those guys be involved, and watching their relationships is a pretty cool thing.
Mhm. Well, that's why I do 3 sports. One of them I have to give up eventually because doing all 3 sports is starting to kill me a little bit. I wasn't burnt out, but when I get a day off and then it's right back to work, it's because like we were done with school June 2nd, June 5th. All right, basketball starting, waits for football start, and it's like, okay, I had my day off or whatever. I'm ready to back to work. Um, and then like I told you, we have Fridays and Mondays off now in July. And I think to myself, what do teachers do in the summer? Because I'm sitting here doing nothing. I'm like, what do they do all summer? Are they at the beach right now? I can't go to the beach because I got to be back for football. Because that's all I know since freshman years. You're always doing something in the summer too. That's why I like coaching because I don't know anything else. That's
Yeah,
all you've been doing. Like, and I'm afraid to give that up. Our head coach is the same way. He's like, he's got 4 kids and he coaches football and baseball. And he's like, some point I'm gonna have to stop coaching, but I'm afraid to because this is all I've done. He played college ball. He played at North Central and he was a linebacker. He's like, this is all I know. Like,
yeah,
I'm afraid to find out like what it's like to not have it.
it's hard, and there's a lot of that too. Is like this is what you know, this is how you've operated, this is what you want to do, and what it almost as bad as it sounds defines you after a while.
Uh-huh.
Even if you have a wife and kids and things like that, it's still, this is that's the special thing about football wives and things along those lines is that they truly understand. You can say as much as you want, our family's a priority, but at the end of the day, our family takes a backseat to our careers, and sad as that sounds, I think for the vast majority of it's true. I spend more time raising other people's kids than I do my own.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I am getting married in the fall though, so every football coach can yell at me for that. It was an argument I wasn't going to win.
But, hey, it'll be all right as long as you're marrying up. So I think Honestly, I'm so fortunate with my wife, Courtney. The 5 months I lived here, it made me do some self-evaluating because the 5 months I lived here by myself while the kids were finishing school were harder for me because I was doing my own laundry, cooking,
Uh,
cleaning, like grocery shopping, than it was when I had a wife and two kids, which definitely should not be the case. It just kind of shows the burden I've been putting on her. So it making that adjustment a little bit, it's tough. And now I will say this, like when your kids get older, it's so cool to let them be a part of the program, and same thing with your wife. And those are the things that are make it all worthwhile at the end. But congratulations, man. When are you getting married?
September 15th
In football season.
in football season.
Wow.
Like I said, it was about almost a 2 month argument, and I realized it was one I was not going to win. So I had to talk to the head football coach and say, "Here's the situation. I'm not gonna, whatever." And he wasn't mad. He just gave me a lot of shit, like he's supposed to. And then
Mhm.
as it went on, then he self evaluated. Like I said, he's got 4 kids, and so he self evaluated. And he was like, "You know what? As long as you have us ready to go before the game, because it's out during a game, so it's on a Friday night." He's like, "As long as you got everything ready to go, getting married and family needs to come before that." He goes, "Now you can't miss any other game the rest of your life." And I was like, "All right, you got it. Like the rest, I can't do it again. I get it." Um, but her family, her dad's the oldest of 11 from Ireland, and to travel in September is so much cheaper. They only spent $500 round trip, so it's pricing and everything else. So it's. But then I did have a defense coordinator tell me, he's like, "Steve, there'll be more football games than anything else. You'll have plenty of more. So don't worry about it." He doesn't coach with us, but he's like, "Don't worry about it. Like you're fine." But then you have other coaches be like, "What the fuck is your problem?" And I'm like, "I know, but it's okay."
Yeah, it's tough. And the hardest part at the end of the day, it's going to be the to me. I think the hardest part of it all, as we're getting deep in here, um, Steve, we're going to get real. Is one of the most important days of your life, getting married. Is there's going to be a little you in the back of your mind that's going to be like, I'm just kind of supposed to be somewhere else right now. And as much as you want to say that that's not going to be there, I don't know if you can eliminate that.
No, but I'm gonna keep that to myself. She'll never know that that's.
She doesn't watch your show.
No, I told her she's not allowed to listen. I told my mom that too. I'm like, "You're not allowed to listen to this." But then I went home and she goes, "Yeah, I listened to this one." I was like, "No, you're not supposed to. Don't." But it's cool. You get to talk to all these coaches around the country. I'm like, "I know it is cool, but don't listen to it. I don't want you to be listening." Because she did that when I first started it. She was fiance, girlfriend at the time was like, "Yeah, we pulled it up on YouTube." I'm like, "Don't do that. Don't even do it." But she knows. She knows. I told people in front of her. Yeah, we argued for about 2 months about it, and that's it.
Yeah. Oh, and there's a lot of arguments, man, that you want to be able to start off on a good foot, especially in that realm. So
Well, that's why I told the coaches. I was like, "Hey, I gave in because you guys won't be a part of my life the rest. You will be a part of my life for the rest of my life, but I don't live with you.
yeah,
You know what I
no,
mean?" Like, and they were like, "Yeah, yeah, we get it." But then they gave me some shit, and then they were like, "But the worst part is we can't even go to your wedding. We got to go work." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah,
see,
whatever."
that's smart too. I mean, you're cutting back on that guest list. Really, that's a strategic advantage right there.
Well, that's what I thought. I told like, "You guys are invited," but and then they're like, "Oh, we'll show up at like 10 o'clock." I'm like, "Okay, that works. You guys can be there for the after party."
That's all you need.
It's connected to a building that has a casino. So the perk is when you're done, you go down through this escalator, the back way to the casino afterwards.
Okay.
So that's what they're all about. The coach was like, "Yeah, we'll show up for the casino." Um, I guess back to football talk. So when you showed up there, you said you brought the tempo stuff with you. Was there anything that was told to you like we have to be able to run these plays? Like, is there like run plays you didn't run at South Dakota? They were like, we have to be able to do this.
Not. I'm pretty open to everything. Our head coach and OC here, our OC is very, very smart. We brought in, like I said, tempo as a change up, but being under center, being a huddle team, getting into some more pin and pull, which I've never done before. I've dabbled in it.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have like three different kinds here. So that part was a huge learning experience for me. Luckily, our tight ends coach, who's an O-line guy by nature, he had some experience in it. So I call him the pin and pull run game coordinator. Um, and I use him a lot, Coach Van Asperen, to bounce questions off of him. And then, some of the other things that we ran duo, but not out of all these different sets, which
Uh-huh.
add a whole new, when you start squeezing formations and, adds a whole new definition to it. A little bit more of the RPO game here than what they've done in the past, which I think is really good for us. And it's funny, we're not as much of a gap scheme team as like a lot of teams would think. We still run a lot of zone. We still run some outside zone. That's, I like those plays. That's
Mm-hmm.
where I've hung my hat. I like power. But at the same time, I think there's when you start getting in bigger sets like that, it's a little bit difficult because now you're asking skill guys to make blocks at the point of
Mm-hmm.
attack, and that's not what they major in. And then the other thing is pass protection identification. Changes significantly when you start squeezing formations down. You start adding in a whole new. It makes it much harder on the backs. It makes it harder on the quarterbacks to check protection. I've always taught my tackles to see coverage,
Mm-hmm.
uh, to help them out, and we had communications on the call coverage, which we still do. But there's times where it's like, yeah, I couldn't tell you what the coverage is, because when you have everybody, all 22 people on the football field in between the hashes, there is no tip in your hand.
Right.
So I think those are the things that I'm learning a lot about. I spent a lot of time talking to people, what they've done, how they've implemented it, how they taught it. And that part's been fun for me, is enjoying it. The other thing for me is at South Dakota, our offensive line got pretty good. And, we, from a discipline factor, from a number, we had 19 some guys the last spring I was there. I never worried about problems. I walked into the room, I hit play on the keyboard, and it ran itself. And here it's not like that. Coach Deneke, who's now at Western Illinois, did a really, really good job with this group. He had him for a year.
Mm-hmm.
It's a younger group. So just kind of instilling some of that stuff, and some of that workload again, has been good. It's been a unique challenge. The other thing that's been really different is I've always been one of the younger guys on staff, and now I am way old, compared to these guys. I think, me and our head coach are the only ones with kids on staff. So my wife was asking me, she's like, "Well, where do the other coaches take their kids to daycare?" I'm like, "Babe, they are kids." Like, so that part's been a little bit of a transition.
That happened to me one time. I was on staff. I was the second youngest, and then I went to a different staff, and the head coach and I were the same age, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So now we could relate. And now on staff, I think it's just three of us don't have kids. I think that's it. Like I said, they all have like three or four. It's strange. It's not just one kid. They'll have like three or four. And I'm like, why is it three or four? Well, you guys have that many kids? They're like, yeah, our wife
Yeah,
has something to do.
two's plenty.
That's what I told them, but they have four. And they're all within like a year or two of each other. But with there's a word thrown around I've been studying it too, is that word culture. And I'm like, culture gets thrown around too much. When you come into a new room, not the culture setting, but like when you come into that offensive line room, how did you say, okay, I'm going to set the standard of my room, like when it's brand new? What's the process of that? Like when you come in to set that tone in your room?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think it's a question that you put a lot of time and thought into, and it's something that I've changed as I've gotten older because it's hard. It's one of the first times you're nervous, and that's important. Like, well, that first impression is important, and your expectations. And one of the first thing I do now is I go through. I haven't posted behind me, but it's kind of grayed out. But I have a set of rules for myself, and I go over those, like what you're going to expect from me,
Mhm.
and then kind of going through that is what I'm going to expect from you in return. Um, one of the things I tell them, it's not going to be easy. A little bit of it's recruiting too. Like, hey, you got to get these guys to buy in and buy in quick
Mhm.
to what you're saying. I've always said, it's funny. A lot of people say, well, you have to care about your players to be a good football coach. I do care about my players immensely. I love them all to death. But I think to be a good football coach, you got to make them better.
Mhm.
There's too much time and effort that goes into this for them not. To be a great coach, you got to do both. So I think finding ways to teach them to get better and so they can see the improvement quickly is really, really important. I think doing your research on what their strengths and weaknesses are before you get into the room, so you can start working on those immediately, I think gives you a huge advantage. But I think setting the tone, setting the culture, whatever is going through what they can expect of me. I think is as important of what you do, even probably more important than what you're saying, what you're expecting of them.
Mhm. And I always say that's the old line room is the funnest room to be in,
Mm-hmm.
I think. Uh, at least mine is. The head coach will come in and watch, and then there's times he'll go out to the other coaches, and I'm crazy down there. Like if a lineman's like blocking high, I'm like, man, you're higher than Stoop Dog right now, and then they all get a little giggle, and other coaches kind of look at me like I'm crazy, and the head coach is like, but you see his meeting room. That's how he is in there. He's a little off the wall. But those linemen are just staring at him. They're laughing. They're having a good time. They're buying into what's going on. And I'm like, yeah, because I have to be lively. I can't just sit there. I have to move around. I have to make jokes. I have to be outrageous in my talk. Like, hey, imagine there's a buffet over there and you got to get to it. Like, just block them to that buffet or something. Like just something off the wall. And the funny part is, I've been that way. So my seniors, the freshmen's eyes get real big when I get all crazy. They're like, "The hell is his problem?" And I have to tell them like, I have a few screws missing. It's okay. And the seniors are just like, he's fine. Just let him go. You'll get used to it. And like, this is how it works. And then they start doing it to each other, and then
Yeah.
they laugh and they feel comfortable and everything else.
But and I mean, you start talking about the amount of time. I always, especially older guys, I've always said and I think every line coach does it. You have to throw some humor in there and engage them because if you want to bring your young guys along, you're going to watch some plays. You might get through 5 plays in a half hour, and
Mm-hmm.
the guy that's been sitting there for 4 or 5 years already is like, oh my god, like this is miserable.
Yep.
And so finding ways to keep those guys engaged is really important.
Yeah. And then what was I going to say? But not because I've coached quarterbacks, I've coached all that, and I've had meetings in there, and I try to do that, and they just don't understand the language if I'm trying to
Mhm.
bring that in there. And that's why, like, when the kids buy into being O lineman, I can be crazy, I can do whatever. And I always tell them at the beginning, like, my first film session of every summer is I'll look into a senior and I'll be like, okay, tell these younger guys, like I just said, I have a few screws missing. I'm going to say outrageous things, blah, 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 blah. But is it ever personal? Like when I'm coaching or saying whatever, is it ever personal? And he says, no, it's never personal. So I tell the young kids, like, it's never personal. Now, if you ever feel like it's personal, you have a conversation with me, we dab it up, do whatever, like, hey, it'll never happen again, blah, 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 blah. Then I'll tell you to suck it up, like quit being a baby. And But the best part of the day is that first film session because those freshmen faces makes me laugh. Or first year players that like, or if they're playing varsity for the first time, but their eyes get real big in their faces, and they're like, "Oh my god, he's crazy." And then the head coach will come in and be like, "Yeah, he's crazy." And I'm on the field doing the same thing. And like the best part is when the freshmen are now sophomores and they're quarterbacks and they come down and they see how crazy I am in inside run. They're like, "Oh," and I'm like, "You guys just throw a football around all effing day, blah 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 blah. We're down here," and they're like, "Don't yell at me." I am absolutely nuts, but I think you have to be.
There's a little bit to that. There's the finding ways to keep guys engaged and finding ways to keep your own sanity is really important.
Yeah, I have to. I have to have fun. And then the best part is then, at least for me, then if I see them in the hallway, they can come up to me and still have fun. Like little kids will come up to me and do a pass set on me, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like they'll just see me, like they'll come behind me and do something, and I'm like, Jesus. But they can have fun with me. They're like, he's not going to yell at me. He's not going to freak out. Um, or they'll come up to me and make fun of my shoes. I'm like, what's wrong with my shoes? But then you got the freshmen, sophomores that are like, did you just say that to him? And they're like, yeah, he's fine. But that's the best part of like, I could see them in school and do all that stuff. But that goes back to building relationships. That's part of that standard you said. That's part of all that. Because then in a game, you could get them to buy into what's going on. And then during a game, when things are tense, they already know what you're going to say before you even say it.
Yep.
When it's established that way.
Mm-hmm.
But like for you, I think you said you kept all the linemen in. The biggest thing for college coaches that I feel bad for is this transfer portal. Like they could leave, they could do whatever, and recruiting's changed a little bit. Where I've always asked college coaches, like, do you still recruit high school the same, or now is it like split where it's like I used to spend all this time in high school, now I got to spend more time looking at that portal too.
Yeah, I think so it's funny. I actually like the portal,
Uh huh.
and most coaches don't. What I think it does do is it holds me accountable to what I say in a kid's home recruiting.
Uh huh.
What they can expect of me, and if I'm not making a kid better, that they're gonna, um, they have the right to move on, just like I have the right to move on. Um, and but obviously recruiting the transfer portal is important. And if you want to be able to win games, you're going to need to pick up some guys and fill in some pieces. I think the hardest part of the whole thing is not, it hasn't taken away from any of your recruiting high school kids, it's just added to your workload
Uh-huh.
of, the recruitment of going through the portal and contacting people and not just that, but your on-campus recruiting. I
Uh-huh.
think huge thing. Um, they're Coach Fox does a good job here setting aside budget for it because it is expensive. Like, what are you doing to make these guys want to stay?
Uh-huh.
What are you doing to make their experience most enjoyable and beneficial as possible? And I think you got to be able to do that, especially as for us, Coach Fox took this over and it was in tough shape. And he's built the program up year by year. And when you're in that building phase, the one where we're about to turn the corner on, that's the whole key is keeping those guys bought in, because at the end of the day, the seniors that we're going to play for us this year are going to get to enjoy 1 year of a winning season, but they really are responsible for building the program and the culture to what it is.
Uh-huh.
And have successful seasons after that.
Yeah, sometimes I hear coaches having to replace some people or like personally have talked to people more than just the media can say what they want. That is what it is. When I personally text coaches, there's some that deal with a lot that they're gone, they lose 4 or 5 kids, and they got to quickly get them back. And I feel bad for them because that just adds more work onto what you were doing. But like you said, they don't look at it as a negative. They're just like, I have to put in an extra hour now, or I have to work a little extra harder. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
So the media can say what they want, but when I personally talk to people, I'm like, I know what's really like what it really looks like.
Yeah. I mean, I think the hard part is like you can't leave campus too much. Like you got to be around the facility, you got to be around your guys. You have to, when they're in here lifting, you got to be in here with them.
Mhm.
Uh, you got to be able to build those things, and because and you have to truly, you do need to truly care about them because they're going to see through that
Yeah.
if you don't. And if a guy's not playing yet, what is he around for? Obviously the hope to play. When that starts diminishing, you still need people. What is he staying for?
Mhm.
I think that's really important that you establish that and make sure that because everyone is important and making sure that everyone realizes that.
Well, that's been the biggest thing, like with trying to talk to coaches and this podcast thing. I remember last year I could get a hold of you guys easier. Like it was you guys had a little bit more time than now. Some that I text, like you said, just on campus more. Like I've high school coaches when they go see a coach at a college, they might talk to them for 10 minutes. Like, all right, I gotta go talk to this kid. I gotta go do this. That's a good point. Is just on campus more or more hosting of recruits and talking and this and that. And that's what it's churned into. But your approach is good. Like if it's going to be this way, you might as well embrace it and make it a positive and keep looking at it this
Yeah,
way because it's not a negative. It's just different.
exactly. It's good and bad, and then I think there's good and bad things to everything. I don't love the fact that I think a lot of times young men get told from home advice or information that may not be the best for them.
Mhm.
That's uneducated and that steers them, and you can't blame them for that. They are, these are the people that trust and raise them. So it's hard as a college coach to be like, hey, I promise you, I'm not trying to cut them short, and so that part I think is always unfortunate because there is a time where I think the transfer portal is really good for some young men to move on. And it's a
Mhm.
good fit for them, and they need to do it for multiple reasons. But there's also a time where, hey, you kind of gotta wait it out, and it's going to benefit you in the long run. And it's really hard to tell. We all know, hey, when I was 19 years old, I had all the answers, and
Mhm.
it's really hard to convince, that age group that they're not right. And um, I'm still paying off some of those mistakes. That I wish I would have listened to some other people during that age. But I think that's a big thing is as those guys move on is just trying to give them the information they can. And the other thing is I deal a lot more with parents than I ever have. I talk to all of the parents on my team or in our offensive line room. They all have my cell phone number, and that's a constant relationship that you have to build because at the end of the day, especially offensive linemen, if they're struggling, they're going to talk to their mom.
Mhm.
That's a tool that I utilize often to make sure that we're giving our guys the best experience possible.
Yeah, I thought I knew it all at 25 too. So it it never stopped. I think I was 30 when I was like, oh, I don't know anything.
That's really, I think that's the cutoff. I tell people all the time. I was like 29, 30, where I was like, oh gosh, and then it just keeps going down from there. But yeah, it's a little alarming how much you think at that age, and that's kind of what makes it dangerous.
Especially when I was an OC at 25, I definitely thought I knew it all. 24, 25 from a football perspective. Then I realized, like I said, 29 to 30, 28 to 30, how much about life I didn't know. Like, especially when you got your own insurance for the first time, you're like, I don't understand any of this. Or,
Yeah,
paying bills. What the hell is that? What are you talking about?
I thought I had insurance. I didn't know I was going to get a medical bill.
Yeah. Or when you have to pick an insurance plan, well, which one do you want? What does all this mean? Well, I don't understand what this means. And they're like, well, you got to pick one. And then when you do pick one and it's not the right one, what do you mean I can't go see this doctor? What do you mean I got to pay this? What do you mean I got to do this? But I was bailed out. My mom works for a health insurance contract. So I'm a mama's boy. So when it's insurance, I'm like, Mom, what does this mean? I was bailed out that way. Or when you buy a car for the first time.
Yeah, there's a lot to that. There's a lot that goes into all those things.
Uh, I didn't buy a car till I was almost 30 anyway. My parents gave me a car to use. But it wasn't, kids nowadays get those brand new nice cars. We have a kid at high school, his first car was a Tesla. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I drove like a 1993 car forever. It got me from point A to point B.
That's all it did.
That's all that. That's why when I didn't buy a car till 30, my family believes in running cars into the ground before anything. And that's the way I do it. Keep it
Mm-hmm.
alive just as long as possible until I have to do something. And that's what happened. I drove their backup car to the ground, and then they said, okay, now you gotta buy a car. And I thought it was easy. I went in, I didn't realize everything that went along with it, the extra payments you got to make, and what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? Then you got to sign your life away. But
Yeah, it's a learning experience. There's no doubt. We've gone through all that.
that's why we need a high school class about all that stuff.
No question. No question. Probably a college class too.
Oh yeah,
Freshman.
yeah. I took business classes in college and I didn't pay attention because it was
Life
boring.
skills classes.
Well, it was just about starting a business, and I was like, I don't care. I'm bored. This is stupid. But again, you're 20 years old and you're like, I know it all. I don't. This is stupid. I'd rather go do PE classes and play badminton because our badminton teacher was an Olympic badminton player. That's why I wanted to do that.
That's pretty legit.
And the son is an Olympic player too. He's like top in the nation, or used to be. This was years ago. And he never cursed. That was the best part. This teacher never cursed. So if you talk smack to him about trying to, because in high school we all play badminton, we think we're really good. He was Olympic, but he never cursed. So when he talked smack to you, it was actually really funny because kids would come in and they're like, I could beat him. So
Not
he,
even close.
well, he play him one on one, and if they would try to spike it, and he would steal it, and he'd be like, "Oh, you almost had me. Oh, you almost had me. Oh, I thought you were good." Like that type of smack talk, and he'd win 21-0, and I thought it was hilarious. And then I realized I do the same thing in basketball. I walk into the football team and I stretch every day. I'm like, "Oh, it's a great day," and they go, "What do you mean?" "Oh, it's best to know I'm the best basketball player walking into this room right now." And then they're like, "We want to play you one on one." And then they want to play King of the Hill and play me all day. And I'm like, guys, I'm old now. I'll play one guy this day. Give me 2 days off. And then I'll come back that fourth day. And then I'll play you. And then I tell them, and they're like, what do we get if we win? And I'm like, well, if you win, I'll buy you a Gatorade. Well, that's not good enough. And I'm like, well, don't play me then. We get to not come to practice the next day. I'm like, no, 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 because then I'll get fired.
That's not how this works.
Yeah, I was like, that head coach over there will fire me. I said, I'm already getting married in the fall. If I let you not come to practice, he will fire me.
Yeah, we just had a putting contest with the old linemen in here this morning, and they all beat me, pissed me off.
Is that why you're playing golf? That's the whole reason.
Yeah, I have to recoup because now they all think they can beat me in golf. They can't, and I think that'll be the time for me to retire is when they can start beating me at golf. So
I will never do that. There's kids that are like, do you ever just stand there sometimes when you're just waiting around and you do this? Sometimes I just do. I don't even play golf. Sometimes I just do that. And the kids are like, oh, I can beat you in golf. And I'm like, I'll never challenge you to golf because
always that's especially here. That's a big thing.
is it now?
With we have a lot of golfers on our team. We have some good golfers too. So it's funny. We don't, our staff, there's only one other guy on staff, two other guys on staff that play. This is the most staffs I've been on. Everybody plays. But so it's a little bit different that way.
Yeah, a lot of people on our staff play golf too, and I'm the guy that tried when I was younger. I did it every year for a while. Then I moved up to the suburbs and realized, oh, the suburb people have expensive golf courses, so I'm not even going to touch that. I'm used to my hole in the wall, like
Yeah,
dollar membership. Up here, it's like, oh, you want to pay $10,000 to be a membership? I'm like, no, that's okay.
I don't at all.
Or it's like, hey, you want to pay $100 for 18 holes? No, nope.
It's crazy how expensive it is.
I gotta find my hole in the wall. I'm a hole in the wall person. Restaurants, bars, golf. It's got to be a hole in the wall. It's the type of person I am. When you grew up in the country, you need a hole in the wall. Up here in the suburbs, there's not a lot of those opportunities.
Too many people to have holes.
I find them though. I find the hole in the walls, and then I feel at home. We went to a place called Peanuts, and I'm like, this is has to be a hole in the wall. It's called Peanuts, for God's sake, and it is. It's right on the river, and I'm like, this is it right here. This is the place.
What's your spot?
Then the golf courses though, I Google them, and then if they're a hole in the wall, then it's like, should I even go there? That's the type of problem. Because then you compare them to the nicer looking places, and you're like, or we just did a golf outing for a coach that got married. He did the right thing and got married in the summer. But we went to the golf thing for him. Me and the other guy that got paired together, got paired with two guys we didn't know. They were like, oh, yeah, we're in sales. This was a Wednesday. We're in sales. We're just out golfing today. They were making deals left and right. And I heard them say something like, oh, yeah, here's $100,000 deal. And I'm like, I'm not nice enough to be at this golf course. They were all like, and I'm like a football coach trying to wear like my bucket hat and stuff like that. And they're like, I'm like, I'm not nice enough to be here. I don't even know if I'm allowed on this golf course. And they're like, oh, yeah, we pay people to train us. I'm like, okay, nope.
I'm out. I'm out.
Yeah. And then they're trying to help me and the other guy out. And we're like, that's where we drew the line. We were like, oh, we're going to move ahead. Like, we'll see you guys later. Well, coach, I know you got to go golf. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Get you coming back.
Yeah, anytime. And if you want to, I got another week yet. If you want to pop on for another one, feel free. But yeah, love being on here. Appreciate it.
Oh yeah, you'll be back. I'll annoy you enough to be back.
I'll make sure of it. I think thank you for having me on these. I like them.
No, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.